Decades ago, Israel built a wall in the West Bank that's as long as 280 miles and also 26 feet in height. Now, there are questions as to whether or not that wall should come down, especially after in 2004, the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to take it down. Now, there are a lot of issues with this wall, including the fact that even though it was originally built to prevent attacks toward Israel, it hasn't been successful in doing that, but it has crippled the economy of Palestinians living in the West Bank. So let's take a quick look at this AJ Plus video. It's just a little snippet of it. Watch the full video in the link in the description box below, and we'll have a discussion about it.
Israel began building the wall in the early 2000s during a wave of suicide bombings that targeted Israelis. The Israeli government calls it the separation barrier or the security fence and says the aim is to keep out Palestinian attackers. But thousands of Palestinians still manage to get across every day looking for work. So if the wall doesn't stop people from crossing, then what does it do? Let's take a look at the root of the wall. You'd think a wall meant to stop people from entering its territory would be built on Israel's border. But 85% of it is inside the occupied West Bank on Palestinian land. International law says it's illegal to build settlements like these on occupied territory. But this is one of over 200 settlements and settler outposts housing 500,000 Israelis in the occupied West Bank. Technically, these settlers live outside of Israel proper, but the wall has shifted the boundary between Israel and the West Bank to swallow up more Palestinian land. When the wall is completed, an area the size of Chicago will have been added to the Israeli side of the wall. While settlers who live west of the wall are full Israeli citizens with rights and benefits, the Palestinians who live in that same territory have none.
So Dena Takruri from AJ Plus is with us to talk about this story. Before we get serious, let me just note that I like that the Palestinian graffiti game is strong. So now I
might not a big, beautiful, tremendous wall, by the way. That was not a Donald Trump wall.
Yeah, Donald Trump claims it is. He's praised that wall many times. So, I have a possibly different take on this. I'm curious what all of us are going to think here, obviously. First of all, I think that, yes, obviously people can cross the wall to go to work, but I think it has done a decent job of keeping more bombers out. And I'm curious what your take on it is, Dena. And I'm actually not against the wall. I'm against the wall where it is. So I think that if they built a wall in the 1967 borders, the one that almost the whole world believes will eventually get to a settlement between the Israelis and Palestinians that are roughly along those lines, then I would actually like the wall. Because I think the Israelis and the Palestinians could use a little bit of separation for some time. I'm not in the camp of, no, it's okay, let's mix a lot. Yeah, let's get peace, let's settle down a little bit. And then we can go back to maybe doing it in a more controlled
You're
way.
for the wall if the wall works, but on the proper borders.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to mistake what I'm saying. I'm not in favor of the wall where it is today.
Right.
Yeah.
So you did this story, Dena. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that the International Court of Justice ruled that this wall is illegal. And, Beit Salem, which is a leading Israeli human rights organization, too, says the aim and the route that it takes is not for security reasons. So to answer your question, I don't know what to attribute the drop in suicide bombers to. There are many factors. I would not say that the wall is one of them. What they do specifically say, and what many critics have said, is what the wall is accomplishing is a land grab. Because you have Israeli settlements that are in violation of international law that are built on the other side of that green line that you saw, on occupied Palestinian territory in violation of international law. And the wall's route is actually much longer than the green line because what it does is it sort of wraps around those and effectively will annex that, those settlements, which are Palestinian land, onto the Israeli side.
Yeah, the wall looks like a gerrymandered congressional district. I mean, it's horseshit.
It runs directly through neighborhoods. It's cut off farmers from their lands. It's devastated the economy. I mean, if you watch the rest of the video, you'll see me in Bethlehem. And Bethlehem, which you would assume would have a booming tourism industry, which is, when I was there, I was like, man, Jesus would be so sad to see what it is because you literally have a little tourist shop and a restaurant, a hotel here, and bam, the wall's right in front of you.
Although I'm not sure Jesus would have been in favor of tourism industry. But
He definitely was in,
I mean,
he was
you
definitely in
could
favor
argue
of
that,
huge
but
walls.
I don't think walls are the solution. I think when you're there and you actually see it and you see how monstrous and huge it is, I mean, it takes many different forms. It's not just concrete like that, but where it is concrete, it is 26 feet high. It does something to the human psyche. It's not a solution.
Yeah, so
I think,
which is why they don't want it on their border.
Why
Right?
do-
I
why
mean,
do they
that's
need
the thing. But I'm with Cenk. If we reach a point where it would make a difference in where it would keep people alive, I have no problem. Israel gets to do whatever the hell they want on their border, and if you want to build a 26-foot wall on your border, okay, that's your country, your border.
Here's the thing:
Go
is
nuts.
Israel has never formally declared what its borders are.
but we're
okay?
declaring it.
And okay, you
Yeah,
guys are
we're
declaring it.
declaring it.
But the fact of the matter is that it is still occupying the West
Totally.
Bank and Gaza, also in violation of international law.
Totally, we agree
So why
with
don't
you.
we talk about ending that occupation first, and then talk
Well,
about?
but I'm
walls?
saying, but if what Israel wants to pull back and build the wall on the 1967 borders, then you guys, everyone can be like, okay, great, because then you have that land, and we can stop referring to these. I'm getting obsessed with language lately. You know, I want to change PC because it's a terrible phrase. Those are not settlements; those are subdivisions. Like a settlement is like, oh, that's nice. These sort of live off the land Israelis are going and they're farming, right? That's a settlement. That's what a settlement means. That's where that looks like Bethesda. That's like
It's
you know,
very. It's like a nice
a suburb.
suburb.
it's a nice
very
suburb. They build a
beautiful
suburb. Those are big, giant subdivisions.
and
I mean,
you don't
what's-
get to build suburbs.
You don't get to build subdivisions on somebody else's land.
Exactly. So, look, the point of agreement that we have here, that I'm sure not everybody in the audience is going to agree with, is that the occupation is the heart of the problem. So, look, everything is complicated. So, is the wall a part of lowering terrorism in Israel? I think that it is one of the causes. You disagree. You think that there's evidence that it is not one of the causes. Do we think there should be a wall if we had the right borders? Again, we disagree there a little bit, and it's complicated. Yes, it has an oppressive feel to it. Generally speaking, human rights organizations are against walls. To me, it depends on what wall? Where is it, right? In America, I don't want a wall on the Mexican border. I don't want it on the Canadian border. But on the other hand, we don't have the same issues that the Israelis and the Palestinians do. I've mentioned this in the past. I'm sure I'll take heat for this too. I think the wall that separates the Turks and the Greeks on the Cypriot side is a pretty good wall. They haven't had any violence in 50 years. So now you could disagree as to what the Turks did initially in Cyprus, but there's no violence. And there was, before the wall, there was tremendous violence between the Greeks and the Turks. So it depends. But I think the one part we all agree on is, can we end the occupation already? It's like the drug war. It's like the Cuban embargo. How long can you go and not realize that it's a mistake?
I mean, what I will say is this, is like, we went all over the West Bank to film this piece, and it is so difficult to move around there because of the occupation, because you're encountering checkpoints, you're encountering road closures. When we were there was when this the recent unrest was happening. This was about a month ago, so there would be frequent clashes, and you have to reroute. I saw more than ever, and this is not my first visit to Palestine or Israel, I saw more than ever that the military occupation that's been in place since 1967 is so entrenched. And this wall is really, really facilitating that. I mean, you have Israelis and you have Palestinians that are living in the same land, and there's two separate systems that are governing them. Palestinians are under the military system. That means they go to military courts. That means that there's arrests without charge or trial sometimes. And Israelis, including the settlers that live on occupied Palestinian territories, are full Israeli citizens, like we mentioned in that piece. So
look, there is to me the most important point that doesn't get made enough in the mainstream media is there's such a thing as state violence, and we ignore it. We pretend it doesn't happen. So when you put people in open air prisons, as the Gaza Strip is, and to some degree the West Bank is, and you build a wall around them like they're in a prison, and then you say you don't get to control that territory, well, we control it. You can't control your own borders. You can't, you don't have sovereignty over your own citizens. And if you're going to go anywhere, you're going to go through my checkpoints, and I'm going to need to see your papers, and I'm going to degrade you in every way possible through this occupation. And then, on top of that, every once in a while come in, arrest people without any due process, etc. And if you resist, well, I'm either going to arrest you or I'm going to shoot you. Well, that's state violence. That's if a non-state actor arrests someone, that would be called a kidnapping. So if we arrest someone inside the United States, that's an arrest. If we arrest someone that's German, that's a kidnapping. And by the way, we did that as well during the Bush years. We just go grab people from other countries. The CIA would, and you know what that was? wildly illegal. And that is in violation of international law. The entire occupation is in violation of international law. And if you're in the camp of, no, I'm a liberal in every regard, except when it comes to Israel, I think the right wing nails it. The right wing is horrible for America. The right wing is horrible for Russia. The right wing is horrible for every other nation. But for Israel, it's awesome. You're having a breakdown in logic. The reality is the right wing hurts Israel by continuing the occupation for 50 years. It is a mistake. And so it is not lowering terrorism. Yes, I get it. The wall, you can have a dispute about that. But overall, you've put these people in an open air prison, and then you say, oh, golly gee, they hate us because they hate us. No, there's some chance that they're pretty pissed about being occupied. And if you want to say, no, they deserve it, they had it coming, the right-wing solution is going to be great for Israel, I think you're entirely wrong. I think it's terrible for the Palestinians, and I think it's terrible for the Israelis.
You could also argue that, that the status quo is not very great for Israelis. I mean, it's better for them than it is for Palestinians. But when we were there, we spoke to a lot of them who were afraid of the stabbings that were happening, stabbings or car ramming attacks. And what a lot of people were telling us was this was not necessarily a third intifada, which is a Palestinian uprising, but every 13, 14 years or so, a new young generation of Palestinians rise up, and they look around them. They're like, life sucks. I was born in a prison. I hate this, and that was a manifestation of that.
And to give credence to some of what the other side politically about Israel, those liberal, and conservatives but it is not just frustration at their circumstances. You give credence to religious leaders and to extremists themselves who say to these kids every 13 or 14 years, you got nothing, you have nothing, you're poor, you have no prospects, your family has no prospects, things aren't going to get better for you, but I'm going to give you something to fight for. So, yeah, there are guys there who are encouraging attacks on Israel.
Let me correct you right there, because this latest, unrest, if you want to call it, was not led. There was no central leadership. It was like random little kids, for the most part, acting on their own.
Okay, I don't doubt there's plenty of that. But I'm just saying you were, as with everywhere else in the world where there is abject poverty and no chance to get out of that, you were creating a breeding ground for religious zealots to thrive and recruit. And because it seems true. Because it is true. You're given a circumstance and said, there's no way out of the circumstance. Here's our way out. We fight our way out.
So, look, guys, when the Palestinians stab the Israelis, that's horrible. And the person being stabbed is not the government officials, not the people making the decision. It's almost every time an innocent civilian that didn't do anything against you. Okay, now, don't let that fester. When you occupy, you let it fester and fester and fester. And then what do you think people are going to feel when they're occupied? I know everybody's got rationalizations for it. No. If we just do it for a couple more decades, then what? Then what? Do they bow their head and go, you are right, I submit to you. You have broken me as a human being. And is that the plan? What's the plan? When does it get better? It's not going to get better. If you occupy Texas, what do you think would happen to the Texans? Okay, my guess is it would fester and they would want to strike back. It would happen to any human being because as human beings, we're not big fans of being occupied by someone else. You want to ignore that. You ignore it not only out of sheer irrationality, and you're blinded by your, honestly, for a lot of people, their identity issues, their politics, etc. But you also ignore it at your peril. Let's get peace. Let's get peace so both sides can live in peace.
And let's direct this to the United States government, too. I mean, it's not, you can't exclusively blame Israel. Israel is a top ally of the United States. Our tax dollars fund that occupation and fund partially the construction of that wall. And so this is something that doesn't just stop with Israel. It needs to be discussed on a domestic level here. But we see successive American governments giving Israel military aid without...
No, this current administration apparently hates Israel.
That hasn't stopped the aid or
no, I'm kidding.
money flowing.
The support for Israel changes this much depending on who's in office.
Yeah, and it doesn't help your friend to continue to enable them in the wrong direction. That's why a lot of our allies, when the U.S. was going to go into Iraq, said, hey, I'm looking out for you. Don't do it. France said it, and we renamed French fries to freedom fries. But they weren't trying to hurt us. They were trying to help us, saying, that's going to be bad for you. That's going to be bad for us. It's going to be bad for everybody. As your friend, I'm telling you, don't go into Iraq. And here, if America really wanted to be an ally of Israel and a friend to Israel, They'd say, this occupation isn't working, it's never going to work. So let us help you get to a decent and just solution so that you can work towards peace. Nobody thinks it's going to be magic that the minute you sign the papers, everybody's going to put down all guns, all weapons, all bombs, and it's going to be nonviolence forever. No, you work towards the nonviolence, but you only work towards it if you're on the right path. But if you stubbornly stay on a path that has not worked for nearly 50 years, you will never get to the right answer, and all you will have is more festering violence on both sides.